Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. It's the second in a series where we discuss the progression of the clinical trials market in Ukraine during the war. Most importantly, it's also where we discuss how we can create solutions together to support clinical trials and patients. Just want to update on a few housekeeping points for this webinar before we start the more interesting part of the session. Your camera and your microphone are muted, but please use the chat function to message us, the organisers, and also to submit your questions throughout the webinar. We'll have a question and answer session at the end, and any questions we don't manage to get to live, we'll follow up with in written format or on a call afterwards. Also, the session will be recorded and sent to the live participants and anyone who registered afterwards, so you can watch on demand too. I'm delighted to introduce our speakers today. We have three representatives from the Oximio team. We have Evgeny Volnyets, who is a healthcare and life sciences lawyer who works closely with the EBA and the Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine to monitor and align with regulatory changes. Also joining us is Dmytro Zavada, who is Senior Key Account Manager, who partners with our clients to develop supply chain solutions for multinational trials, including projects in Ukraine. And then Oleg Makachuk is focused on developing and launching patient-focused services as a business development expert within our strategic services division. Joining the Oximio team for the session today is Ivan Vishnevetsky, who is president of the Ukrainian Association of Clinical Research and also managing director of Future Meds in Ukraine. I believe many of you on the call today will know the important role that Ivan plays in developing the clinical trial market in Ukraine. Before I hand over to today's presenters, I want to share a short summary with you of what you can expect during the webinar today. Firstly, we'll review the status of trial startups in Ukraine more than 100 days after the war started. We'll also review what it means to operate under martial law and any regulatory changes as a result. Ivan will share a first-hand perspective of the challenges and opportunities for sites during this time. Lastly, we'll look at how the industry can work together collectively to overcome disruption and ensure that studies continue and the patients receive their treatment. Thanks again to everyone for joining today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm pleased to hand over to Dmytro to get us started. So Dmytro, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, everyone from Ukraine, and welcome to today's session. My name is Dmytro Zavada, and I'm Key Account Manager at Oximio. Today, I would like to share with you the current status of the Ukrainian clinical trial market and how the world sees Ukraine. As you know, there are many clinical trials in our country, and Ukraine has established itself as a reliable country for conducting clinical trials with excellent logistical capabilities and professional medical and research specialists. But 105 days ago, we as Ukrainians and the Ukrainian clinical trials market faced many challenges such as patient safety, patient relocation, closure of clinical sites, disruption of logistics, inability to send biosamples. And it all looked like a chaos for which obviously each of us was not ready. But at the same time, the period has fantastically united the efforts of the community in order to save clinical trials, develop new solutions for continuing the treatment of patients, which we will share with you later today. I want to assure you that all this is being done not only as a response to the current situation in the country, but also as a further development of clinical trials in Ukraine. Of course, it's clear to all of us that we note a significant decline of clinical trials activity in the country since the outbreak of the full-scale war in February. But at the same time, there are several signs of cautious confidence in the market. With a couple of examples, Ukraine is still being considered within multinational studies as a potential location based on data aggregated by Global Data Portal from March to May this year. Of the 51 trials that include Ukraine as location, more than half are ongoing and recruiting, and more than half are at phase 3. Oncology and central nervous systems are the primary indications here. Approximately 90% of sponsors continue their trials in the country. The supply chain has fully adapted to the current circumstances. Such services and such options like import, export, delivery are possible. And in our experience, sponsors are increasingly beginning to focus on information in the country from our own words, from the people who live and are here, and not just from the news as it was at the beginning of the war. Lisa, next slide, please. Yes, and another fantastic thing that Ukrainian Ministry of Health continues to approve new protocols in the country. As you can see from the slide, 30 trials have been approved within the last 3 months. What can this tell us other than just the number 30? I guess that we all have strong hope for tomorrow, desire, and brave people who can raise clinical trials in Ukraine. Whether it be an investigator, site personnel, sponsor representatives or CROs, share this information with everyone, deliver this kind of data to your colleagues. This is a joint effort and the contribution of everyone is very significant right now. Working together, we can maximize the opportunity to maintain trials and patient treatment in Ukraine. Thank you, and let me hand over the presentation to my colleague Evgeny Volynets, who will provide the regulatory updates to you. Evgeny?
Thank you, Dmitro. Thank you, Lisa. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Evgeny Volynets, Head of Commercial Legal Department in Oximio. It is a big pleasure to present update and recommendations in this webinar. So I would like to start with general slide overview of martial law regime in Ukraine and its impact on clinical trial sphere. Then I will provide some information regarding the recommendations from State Expert Center. And also I will inform you regarding the novelty in Ukrainian legislation regarding expanded access programs. So, as we all know, in February this year, the Parliament of Ukraine approved a decree of President of Ukraine, the imposition of martial law in Ukraine as a special legal regime. For the period of duration of martial law, a range of measures have been taken that would have impact on clinical trial sphere. There are simplification the requirements of the circulation medicinal products and medical devices, simplification the import and selling process of medical products regarding packaging and shelf life, new rules for transportation medicinal products. Now it is possible to use public transport and postal or baggage carriages, but only if the storage conditions are met. Certain exceptions for storing medical products at the premises on which no information has been previously submitted to the license register. Additionally, a range of measures have been taken to ensure that people have access to RX drugs, so without prescriptions, and other measures. As a result, taking into consideration potential difficulties during the war, the State Expert Center of Ministry of Health provided to sponsor the following recommendations. New risk assessment for sponsors. So sponsors should evaluate a feasibility to initiate a new clinical trial, enrollment in new clinical site, or inclusion of new subject to ongoing studies. In case it is impossible to continue a clinical trial at the site, sponsor should transfer such patients to other approved sites in Ukraine or another country. In case of limitation of patients' movement, the following actions should be considered where possible. So, possibility to use distant source of communication, such as telephone or another method. In case it is impossible to obtain an updated written informed consent from a patient, the patient may give it verbal consent using telephone, video conference, or other communication. Change the approach of the IMP transportation. So the sponsor must assess the risk associated with the IMP and consider any alternative methods and mechanisms for arranging the delivery of IMP, but only in compliance with the storage condition established by the manufacturer. Sponsor should consider an option to use site laboratories for patient examination. Also, it is noted that the sponsor may proceed according to the experience obtained during the COVID-19 pandemic and implement the case-based approaches and flexibility to secure the subject's rights and integrity of data collection. So, in conclusion, we can say that martial law completely allows and provides all opportunities for clinical trial sphere, even provide more simplified requirements regarding circulation of medical products and medical devices, new requirements of transportation, storage, and conducting clinical trials. So, Lisa, please, can you switch to next slide? So I would like to touch novelty in Ukrainian legislation regarding compassionate use or expanded access that will work in Ukraine. So Parliament of Ukraine passed the relevant law that will allow to have programs, and the President of Ukraine has already signed it. The law provides access to innovative treatment for patients by regulating legal relations in this area and harmonizing national legislation with European Union legislation. In other words, compassionate use or extended access is a treatment option that allows to use unregistered medicinal products. Such programs include two types: program of extended access of patient to unregistered medical product, and the second one, program of access of clinical trial subject patients to the unregistered medical products after completion of clinical trial. The next step to implement these programs in Ukraine is passing the procedure order of Ministry of Health. So as a member of European Business Association, together with Ministry of Health, we are now in the final stage of drafting the procedure for such programs. This procedure will provide requirements for applicants, for patients, regulate import questions, labeling conditions, stages of programs, and other rules. So we can focus on requirements for program of extended access of patient. So the first requirement is that the medicine has undergone at least the first phase and started the second phase of clinical trial in United States, in European Economic Area, Australia, Canada, Japan, UK, Israel, and Swiss Confederation. The patient is in serious condition or life-threatening. There is no alternative medicine for the treatment for the patient in Ukraine. The clinical trials data obtained are sufficient to access the risk-benefit balance. And also we can provide several requirements for program of access clinical trial subject in these programs. So the main of them, the patient took or is completing participation in clinical trials with this medical product. The patient needs to continue this treatment and sufficient to access the risk-benefit balance. So in conclusion, we can say, so even in wartime, we can see positive moments such as implementation totally new compassionate use and expanded access programs that will allow new possibilities and treatment access for patients in Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. And the next speaker of our webinar is Ivan Vishnevetsky, Management Director of FutureMeds and President of Ukrainian Association of Clinical Research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evgen. And thank you very much, all organizers that you invited me to present some thoughts at this interesting webinar. Hello, everyone, dear colleagues. As an investigator myself, as a site manager, I would like to shed some light how clinical research sites operate today and what we can know for these days from site perspective. So first of all, what we have learned for these 3 months of the war. Needless to say that almost nobody was ready enough for such a disruption, and this is a good lesson to learn for the future. Despite all those previous pandemic lessons, we still are not sufficiently prepared for new devastating events. I also want to admit that some sponsors were really great in supporting sites, supporting patients. This allowed us to quite easily relocate our patients to the safer locations outside of Ukraine, and even relocate them back to Ukraine and continue participating in their trials at their homeland sites. And unfortunately, some sponsors, some CROs were not so effective. So these are also lessons learned from this war period. What we also found out that we still unfortunately live in analog period, analog era, and we still lack of digitalization and implementation of all those available digital solutions like electronic signature for many of clinical trials documents, like electronic site file, electronic I don't know, e-consent, and other different digital solutions that could be very helpful today when sometimes investigators cannot reach their location, their site, just to sign some or to send some document to the monitor. And we also, I think you will join me, we also can appreciate our regulatory authority. They made their job very good. They were quite proactive and fast enough, and they supported sponsor sites with their guidance and communications from the first days of the Russian invasion. So I'm sorry, I just noted that I was muted. But I don't know from what moment. Can you please tell me, from what moment should I repeat?
Last few seconds, so you can
only a few seconds.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. I don't know why. So what we can add from sites perspective, how sites live today, and what issues and what problems do we experience today, and we can bring to our discussion. So again, as an investigator, I want to be sure that this logistics supply route will not be broken again if, I don't know, something happened with main logistics vendor, operator, main depot. I want to be sure that vendors have some backup plans today, and if something will happen, my site operations, my possibility to take care of my patients at the site and to continue all the operations according to the protocol will not be impacted. And unfortunately, for this moment, we investigators and sites unfortunately lack at least communication from sponsors and vendors that they have those backup plans just to calm us. And another issue I want to raise also is a significant gap between our current site's needs and needs of logistics vendors. And what is the nature of this gap? Today, we investigators and sites operate in very volatile environment when patient can cancel or somehow change the date of his or her visit to the site just before the date of the visit. And this is clear because of, I don't know, some transportation issues, some safety reasons, etc. And we see these challenges much more difficult than we saw it before the war. At the same time, our courier services and logistics services became more stringent, more rigid, less flexible, and they cannot, support that kind of flexibility we need today. And I'm pretty sure that most of investigators would greatly appreciate if vendors somehow could close this gap, or at least narrow this gap, by adding some more flexibility, by narrowing those timelines when I can order dry ice, how many days per week I can plan my visits, etc. And one more point I would mention here, all the stakeholders, yes, we know, we appreciate, we know that the ultimate aim of all our activities is supporting our future benefits for society, for medical progress. We all work for to move our medical science further and to bring new treatments for patients. But we also, all of us and every stakeholder, except maybe regulatory authority, state-owned, we also do business. And in current situation and current circumstances, sites need to find some more additional space to store frozen biosamples, need to find some more additional equipment, need to spend more time, need to find some more resources, at least to document all those additional processes for biosample processing and storing and sending. And unfortunately, this is not present in our current agreements with sponsors and contracts, and it is not compensated. And for sure, this could be or should be solved just to be fair in our relationships. So, as we know, any disaster, any great or huge problem can also be a good lesson to learn and to implement new solutions. And this war also can be a good source of insights and thoughts what to do further. We definitely should implement some more infrastructural and legislative resources for being more ready for decentralized trials and hybrid trials right now and for future. We also have to use this momentum to harmonize our local clinical trials regulations with European legislation. We need to take part in reconstructing Ukrainian economy and Ukrainian healthcare system, and to emphasize all the benefits of clinical trials enterprise for both patients and society and Ukrainian economy in general. And we also can be a source of unique expertise on how to manage and how to run clinical research in these extremely chaotic and disruptive environment, like Ukraine currently is, and was a unique source of expertise about radiology, pollution after Chernobyl catastrophe. May I appeal to the whole clinical trials community to bear in mind that our everyday activities at sites, our every research-related action should be not only focused on the sustaining and running current clinical trials, but we should bear in mind that every our action should also have to do something for rebuilding clinical trial enterprise in Ukraine in the future and hopefully in the nearest future. So we need to work every second, every minute, every hour, not only for our current needs, but for our future needs also. So that is it from my side, and I can take over the stage to Dmitro again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan, for this useful and important feedback from the science perspective. Now, colleagues, I want to say a few words about overcoming disruption and challenges. All stakeholders within clinical trials in Ukraine have been working closely together throughout the war to ensure that patients continue their treatment and data collection continues. Each stakeholder has had their own challenges and disruptions to overcome, and it's by working together to streamline processes that we can continue to move the industry forward. Oximio is the first clinical trial service provider to resume end-to-end operations in Ukraine, successfully conducting shipments of IMP and supplies to clinical sites and patients across the country. We continue to create service solutions to meet the emergency needs of studies and patients impacted by the war, and well as maintaining established clinical trial logistics services. Within these difficult 3 months, Oximio has developed several solutions for current circumstances. These are extended and accurate transport coverage in real time. Delivery of materials is possible in more than 80% of regions, including cities such as Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, Poltava, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, and Odessa. Another important point is regional depot opening in Western Ukraine. Establishing a depot in the western of Ukraine was part of our business continuity plan in the event of war in Ukraine. But to be honest and transparent with you, we hoped we wouldn't have to activate this. But we did. And right now the location for the new depot is key because it's important that facility located in the relatively safer western part of the country, but also not too close to major centers or key transport routes. It's located close to the borders with Poland and Hungary for customs clearance purpose, and as a result, imports can be dealt with rapidly, and there is increased capacity for inbound shipments. I will talk about our second depot in detail a bit later. All next directions can be combined in one group: patient-focused services, home healthcare solutions, direct to patient, expanded access, and such important thing as export of biosamples. My colleague Oleg Makarchuk will, no, just Lisa return this, yeah. My colleague Oleg Makarchuk will tell you more about this. But anyway, the purpose of all these solutions is only two things. First one is ensure the safe and on-time administration of IMP to patients, and of course, successful clinical trial data collection. This is the next slide. Here you can see our transport coverage map. As we said before, it's our first webinar. We have zoned Ukraine according to several criteria, and now distribution is possible to most of the regions of Ukraine except the black zone. By the way, you can find the latest distribution coverage map on our website, oximio.com. Wanted to share with you that we have delivered up to 1,200 shipments since 18th of March. And based on our internal data, the most frequent regions where we deliver shipments are Ivano-Frankivsk, about 20% of the shipments, then Kyiv, 19%, and Dnipro, about 9%. So to summarize, there are no real issues with the import of clinical trial materials into the country and their further distribution across Ukraine. Lisa, next slide, please. Yes. And our great achievement, the second warehouse in Brody, Lviv region. Given the need to redesign logistics schemes and supply chains as a result of the war, we recognize important part that an additional facility and associated services play. In less than 2 months, the team of brave people in Ukraine have turned a nightclub in Brody into Oximio's newest warehouse. The facility now is fully operational, ready for audits and ready to receive shipments. 850 square meters storage facility offers storage at +15, +25, +2, +8, uncontrolled ambient storage. Provision, for example, of -20 can be discussed upon the request. In addition to storage, we can process their inbound and outbound shipments, facilitate import services, including customs clearance and acting as IOR. Return, additional labeling, destruction are also possible there. The building fits the requirements for a clinical supply depot with a special focus given to the specifics required because of the impact of the war, including stand-alone building. Then we have their autonomous heating generator. The warehouse is independently operated, and last but not least, located on the highway between Kyiv and Lviv for optimal courier servicing. So this is all from my side at this stage, and let me hand over the presentation to Oleg Makarchuk, who will deliver to you the information about patient-focused solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmitro. Good afternoon, dear attendees. My name is Oleg Makarchuk. I'm a business development expert of strategic services and alliances department. We are responsible for development and improvement of patient-focused, patient-centric services. We continue to create service solutions to meet the emerging needs of studies and patients impacted by the war, and as well as maintaining established clinical trial logistics services. Oximio resumes the following patient-focused services, such as patient reimbursement services, that includes petrol coupons and meal vouchers for patients who are participating in clinical trials, as well as patient transfer within Ukraine to deliver patients from their home to investigational sites and deliver back to their home. And the new one developed and implemented cross-country transfer for the patients that left Ukraine due to war. Those patients were relocated to another sites which located in EU territory, for example, and we support our clients in arranging the cross-country transfer between countries by booking the flights or buying train or bus tickets, booking the hotel and providing the meal for patients. Another one service, which is novel service for Ukraine, is home health care and quick implementation on nurse visits to clinical trial patients at home, and well-developed scheme in compliance with current legislation in Ukraine. And how home health care helps to solve challenges. It's a positive patient experience and reduced number of sites visits for patients and their families, better healthcare outcomes for patient and patient safety, and better patient compliance with the treatment. And for sponsor, it's increased trial participation and improved retention and high level of trial data integrity, as well again patient safety. With regards to biosamples logistics and export, we developed an end-to-end solution to support our clients. We are able to make collection at sites located in yellow, orange, and gray zones mentioned by Dmitro. We are collecting biosamples that require frozen or refrigerated conditions, as well as ambient samples. We agree with the clients on all possible dates of collection to make visit dates more flexible for patients and scheduling by the investigators. The scheme of work is simple. We are preparing the customs docs and documents for sites, including pickup manual with detailed steps. We require to receive the order 48 hours before the date of collection. All shipments are going through Kyiv hub and then through our EU hub. We are making replenishment of dry ice in European hub to guarantee keeping temperature conditions for frozen shipments. And as for the expanded access program, Lisa, please, next slide. As Evgen mentioned about the laws that allow to conduct compassionate use and post-trial access program, currently the orders that regulate how these programs will be conducted in Ukraine is under review and approval by Ministry of Health. And expanded access is a potential pathway for a patient with an immediately life-threatening condition or serious disease or condition to gain access to investigational medical products for treatment outside of clinical trials when no comparable or satisfactory alternative therapy options are available. The regulation will give access to patients for treatment outside the clinical trial as well by unregistered drug and for post-trial access. Once the order will came into force, we are ready to offer our clients support in program approval, the importer of record service, brokerage service, domestic transportations, and controlled delivery to site or patient home. Lisa, please, next slide. And we would like to share the case studies that we already done. And the first one is successful delivery within 48 hours from Kyiv site to central lab in Germany. And just step by step, the budget was agreed with the client and signed change order. We prepared pickup manual for site, collection order request, and confirmation of sending the biosamples by site, and provided to client for further distribution to investigational sites. As well, in parallel, we are prepared customs docs. And the next step was that one of the sites that located in Kyiv has provided the collection order request 48 hours before the date of collection. Oximio made a collection on 23rd of May at 9:40 a.m. at Kyiv site, and biosamples has been delivered to central lab in Germany on 25th of May at 10:03 a.m. As a result, we are satisfied client's expectation, and the patient received further treatment the doctor provided based on the result of analysis. That's all, and we are happy to assist our clients and to keep patients in the trials. Dmitro, floor is yours.
Thank you, Oleg. And now, colleagues, would like to take a few minutes to tell you about the humanitarian assistance from a company called Humacide, where Oximio provided logistical support. When we received a request to help with the delivery of such a product at the human cellular vessel, which is necessary for Ukrainian surgeons to treat wounded soldiers and people, we here at Oximio didn't doubt for a minute that this was our direct responsibility to help here. There were questions about how to bring all this to Ukraine from the United States, given the temperature conditions +2, +8 and non-standard sizes of the kits, with their further delivery to hospitals, which in some cases are very close to a military conflict. But again, working together and with joint effort with Humacide, hospitals and the Ministry of Health of Ukraine, the materials were successfully first imported into the country and then distributed to hospitals, and now they are saving Ukrainians' lives. So I want to say a big thank you to everyone who helps Ukraine in this war. And just a note that I read the comments to prepare the letter from Oximio and association, and it's a great idea that I guess that we need to develop how to do this one. Thank you. That is all, Lisa, from my side, and we can go on to the Q&A.
Thank you, Dmitro. Thank you, everyone else, for sharing your insight into how we manage disruption in Ukraine and keep trials going. So conscious of time, we've seen a few questions come through which we'll do our best to answer with the limited time we have left. But please, if you haven't submitted your question, do so already. As I said, we'll answer what we can now. Anything we don't get to now, we will follow up in written format afterwards. And again, just thanks for joining us. Hope it's provided some useful guidance for you. So as I said, I've seen some questions coming through, and I'll take the first one, which is there's been a question: will we share a version of this webinar in Ukrainian language or hold future sessions in Ukrainian? And this is something that we're reviewing at the moment. We're reviewing the demand. If you would like a version of this presentation or future ones in Ukrainian, please email communications at SMO Group. This email address will be in the follow-up communication to you, and just let us know your preferences, requirements, and we'll do the best to facilitate that. I can see another question here about destruction, which I'll pass over to Dimitro. Dimitro, there's one here. Is destruction possible?
Thanks for question. Yes, totally yes. The destruction facility is fully operated in Ukraine and can provide their services, so there is no any issue with destruction materials in Ukraine. Good.
Short and sweet. There's another question here about to do with expanded access, and it says, who will pay for medicine within expanded access programs after the end of the clinical trial? Evgeny, I think that might be more for you.
Yeah, I believe I will answer. Yeah. So after clinical trials, the patient will have free access to this medicine. So generally, unregistered medical products will be given for free to patients and not for commercial some activities, and only in humanitarian and ethical purposes. So it will be free for patients.
I've got another one here that's come up about expanded access. And it says, will the drugs be given directly to the patient?
No, it will not. So the program begins only after the entity will sign this contract or some document with healthcare facility side, and then the sponsor or who provides this medical medicines will transfer this medicine to site. And then the doctor will provide it for two patients. So it will not be directly. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And I can't see if there are any other questions coming up from the rest of the team. Are there any other questions there?
Yep, Lisa, I see the message on how HHC is aligned with current Ukraine legislation. So we developed, I would like to reply for this question to Andrei, that we developed a scheme which is currently aligned with Ukraine legislation. And please connect with us for presentation of this scheme. As well, just to update all attendees that there was an initiative through a European Business Association to develop the legislation which allowed to do this, and we do hope that in nearest future we will resume the working group to agree on all needed actions. But current scheme, which is developed by us, is fully aligned with current Ukraine legislation. Thank you.
Lisa,
thank you.
There is also a question, I guess, to Ivan, who can comment on this. Are you really prepared for decentralized trials? Do you have law regulation related to e-consent and remote monitoring model? What about availability of electronic medical records in Ukrainian sites?
Yes, thank you. I'll try to answer this question of Aneta. Aneta, I really appreciate your time and your presence at this webinar. Thank you. And unfortunately, in general, answer is no. Ukraine is not ready for conducting decentralized trials right now. We have quite outdated legislation. There is no ability to implement pure e-consent for this moment. There are some, this model of monitoring, remote monitoring, is implemented, not perfectly, but it works. And home care, as we discussed, again, is possible, but with some issues, with some difficulties. And finally, electronic medical records, they are available, but they are not available for clinical research industry in that extent that we need. And it is not, it does not comply with all those requirements for source documents for clinical research. So unfortunately, we can use it, but it's not that extent that we need to use for clinical research. So that is why I mentioned we need to use this moment to adapt and adopt decentralized trials for Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. On that note, I think we're 3 minutes over our scheduled time for the webinar. So I just wanted to thank you, Ivan, and the Oximio team so much for sharing your insight, and also to our attendees for listening. And I think the message that has emerged is the importance of partnering and working together to move trials forward in Ukraine now and in the future. So thanks again, and this webinar will be sent to you so you can listen on demand afterwards, and have a very good rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.